Okay, welcome everyone to the Finance Committee meeting. Trey, why don't we bring up the agenda? Thank you. Okay, we're going to start out today with the approval of the prior meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any action items we're carrying over, John?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Push the button.
Yes, there are a few items. Courtney.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Okay, there was a couple action items for deliverables that Courtney had. Courtney was asked the board to provide water billing information in a useful format. And then Courtney also was going to ask the board to provide to the homeowners an example of what our monthly dues notices will look like after the first of the year with the water meter billings.
Okay, thank you. We'll cover that when we get the update from the board liaison. Do we have other approvals from Susan Artera on the prior meeting minutes? They were sent out a few weeks ago.
They look good to me, Carol. I think I emailed that. I don't have any additions to that.
Thank you.
They look
Tara?
fine to me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to financial statement approval. We have not yet received the financial statements, probably because Nicole has been on vacation. So we will probably
I think
see those.
They don't come in until about this time, maybe between the 16th and the 20th of the month anyway, Carol. So
Correct. They usually
don't know
come in
that-
about the 15th.
yeah,
So we'll
or
save
later.
that. We can do
Yeah.
that online. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question about that? It seemed like I just noticed that the board, at their last meeting approved the financials from the month before, but we hadn't really seen it. So what's your thought about what the process should be when we're not able to really review it in the meeting or talk about it?
As I mentioned in the last couple of meetings, that if we do not have the financial statements to approve in the meeting, when we get them, we go through an approval process online via email. And that's exactly what we've done each time.
I haven't seen that many emails going around, so about the financials. But I'm just wondering if you think it's working okay, or whether we need to, if there's something else we could do to kind of increase our relevance to the whole process.
It seems to have been working well. If you don't see it come out in an email, well, you will see them come out in an email from me. And please feel free to reply with any questions or comments.
Yeah, I will.
I'm sorry. Could we please ask the person that's Zoom user to mute themselves, or if the host can please mute them? Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, I wasn't able to hear that.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't either. I felt myself kind of raising my voice to get over the doggy. Yeah, I'm maybe just, I'd love to see your thoughts too. I just have been I guess, missing emails. So I haven't seen a lot going, out and about. I do see your email coming through with the financials, but just any discussion. I haven't seen that.
That could be because others haven't had any discussion.
Maybe. Okay. Fair enough. Well, I guess I would just, I'd love it if we could just keep revisiting the procedures, you know, just to make sure that everybody is saying the things and thinking about things, you know, in a way that's helpful to the
That's a
board.
great comment. Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay. Courtney, do you have any update from our general manager or any updates for us from your end?
I have let the board know that we are looking for some direction on the water billing and the statement as it wood look, a mock-up of this statement as it would look in January. And I have sent the board the Wood Rogers reports from 2019, I believe. And we did ask Justin for any update to those reports. I've asked Nicole, and I think that they are working with Wood Rogers to see if there are any updates to that. So that really is not moving anywhere right now. It's just, it's notified, everybody knows, and we haven't forgotten it, and we'll make sure that we get on that moving forward. Nicole is back tomorrow, so I'm hoping that what we glean from this meeting, I can discuss with her in the coming week. And I apologize for not being there in person. I'm a little under the weather and I didn't want to spread that around. So I'm in my dining room, so.
Thank you for both of those things. Okay. So, we're going to take a look at the reserve study now. And before we do that, I'd like to preface our review with a few remarks. When I spoke to homeowners in the board meeting in July, I showed how over the last 4 years, our dues have increased from $535 a month to $620 a month. Let's take a look at how that happened. Ray, do you want to bring up that first slide? The beginning. Thank you. And maybe we need to move off the gallery. Thanks. Okay. As you can see here, this is a landscaping.
I'm not able to see it.
We just see the agenda, Carol.
Okay, thank you. Put it on multiple.
I think yeah, there you go.
There we go. Thank you.
Great, okay. So this is a slide that I showed in the July board meeting. And it shows the landscaping portion of the reserve study by year from 2021 to 2027. So it's going back 3 years and forward 3 years. In the fall of 2022, the board increased the reserve study by $777,000 for the year 2023. At the same time, they added $770,000 to the reserve study for the year 2024 in landscaping, and almost $700,000 for the years 2025 and 2026. All of those dollars were added to the landscape portion of the reserves. In 2023, the board continued with those increases, even though there was no project identified to use those dollars. In 2024, the board again left in those $700,000 a year increases in the reserve study. And this caused dues to need to be raised to support these increases. Had the work been done to take a close look at the reserve budget in each of those years, it would have become apparent that those dues increases were not necessary. Today, I would like to take a look at what's possible looking forward. There are several paths we can take with our dues moving forward. Number one, our board can continue to increase our dues just because. Number two, our board can choose to leave our dues level without any increase. Number three, our board could choose to decrease our dues, even a small amount, in order to rebuild trust with homeowners. As homeowners, you have the opportunity to let your board members know your thoughts on this issue. What I'm going to show you today is what those possibilities look like. This slide shows one piece of the reserve analysis, the current analysis. Looks like our internet is a little bit slow.
What is the practical solution that's also like in alignment with the law? That's
Peter, do you mind muting yourself?
For a novel scenario.
Excuse me,
Thank
someone's
you.
talking and you might need
That
to
was
mute.
Peter.
mute.
He's muted now.
Thank you. Okay. So this slide is one piece of the current reserve study. It's the irrigation line item for valves. And this is being used to for the related shrub tear out and replacement for the siding project. As you can see, in 2024, there was $530,000 put in this particular category. 2025, another 543,000, and 2026, another 556,000. For 2024, you can see the actuals up to this point, the actual spending that we've done for the shrub tear out and replacement, $214,000. Remaining for the year is $188,000 if spent. So that would be $50,000 or $60,000 a month to be spent, which would leave $127,000 in the balance for 2024. I've suggested the forecast be changed in 2025 from $543,000 to $364,000. This is based on the average amount per home that we've seen in the past times the 141 homes that are expected to be done in 2025. And that number is from Paul Reeves. Again, in 2026, 140 homes that he expects to be done. And in 2027, expecting that in August of that year, or shortly thereafter, we will finish the project, and that will equate to $160,000 based on the averages per home for the shrub removal and replacement. You can see in 2028 and 2029, there's 400,000 in each of those years, and I've suggested those be zeroed out because, as I mentioned, Paul Reeves expects that in August or shortly thereafter of 2027, we will be done with the siding remediation project. Next slide. Thank you. This is a slide showing the line items for irrigation repairs in the reserve study, including repair of controller stations and landscape drain repairs. And you can see all of the actuals shown there. The total actuals into September, $157,000. It's suggested that most of the irrigation stations and irrigation parts will have been redone or repaired this year, both from general repairs and from all of the new irrigation that's been put in Zone 4 in Phase 1 and all of the Phase 2 work that's being done this year. So the suggestion is to forecast $100,000 of each of the next 2 years in case we find that we do have an unusual amount of repairs ongoing. And then in 2027 and onward, go back to the 30-some thousand a year that it was in 2021, 2022, and 2023. So level setting. Next slide, Trey. This slide shows just the tree portion of the reserve study. So tree pruning and tree removals. And you can see again the actuals into September, totaling $271,000. We've done a large amount of tree pruning and tree removal this year based on our experiences in 2023 with the storm. So most trees have been touched this year one time, if not 2 or 3 times. So moving forward, I'm suggesting a budget of $250,000 rather than $400 and some thousand a year. And because so many trees have been done this year, we expect that $250,000 ongoing will be a good level setting for future years to make sure that our trees are kept up appropriately. The remaining amount after the actuals into September for 2024 is $176,000, which is about $50 or $60 a month for the remaining months of the year. Next slide, Trey. Thank you. So this view is of the siding project itself. So you can see that the actuals through July 31st are 1.1 million for this year. And per Paul Reeves, the ongoing siding for 2024 will be another 73 homes, which will be about $1 million additional dollars. In 2025, Paul Reeves suggests another 141 homes will be done at just under 2 million. And in 2026, another 140 homes at his estimate of just under $2 million. In 2027, 62 homes will round out the remaining of the siding project at $878,000. The suggested forecast here is to make a small reduction for 2025 based on Paul Reeves' numbers, and perhaps another small reduction in 2026. And I think everybody may know that Paul Reeves is our siding project consultant. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. Next slide, Trey. So this is an analysis of what these proposed changes might do to our dues. The first section is landscaping, and the second section is siding, painting, and fencing. So the siding project. In the first section, the changes proposed would equate to a dues change per home per month in 2025 of $74. In 2026, it would equate to a dues change per home per month of $75. In 2027, $72, 2028, $97, and 2029, $100 per home per month. 2027 and 2028 and 2029 are higher reductions because we've removed the siding landscape remediation work from those years because the siding project will have been finished. For the siding project, in the second section, the dues change proposed per home per month in 2025 would be an additional $57. And in 2026, another $21. And then the siding project completes. So based on this proposal, the total reduction in dues per home per month could be as much as $131 per home per month. In 2026, as much as $96 per home per month. In 2027, $72 per home per month. And in 2028, $97 per home per month. And in 2029, $100 reduction per home per month. Next slide, Trey. In conclusion, this proposal keeps consistency in the level of service for both landscaping and the siding project. It lowers the dues each year for 5 years. It maintains current and future project timelines and reduces monthly dues contribution to reserves, with the final amount of dues dependent on operating budget changes. Now, for this proposal, I'm asking for a motion to pass this on to the board for approval and review.
Discuss this first, Carol?
As soon as we have a motion, we can go into discussion.
Are you,
motion
you
to,
just can't be serious with this. I mean, it doesn't.
Susan, there's a motion on the table. Can you just wait 1 second? I'm proposing to pass it on to the board for their review.
I'm against it.
I'm against it, but they're looking for a second, so they're not looking for.
I understand. I just want to go on record that I'm against it.
As a point of order, I feel that we should have the discussion before we move to approve, before we make a motion to move this to the board.
Okay. We just have to have a first and a second. We have a first. Do we have a second?
No, as a clarification, I'm thinking about this rule of order thing, and I think we should have the committee discuss this particular proposal first before we do a motion to approve to move to the board. So I would respectively ask Nina if she wants to reverse or withdraw her motion to her original motion.
I will put it on hold until after the discussion.
Okay.
Okay. So Trey, do you want to bring up the screen of the room? Thank you. Okay, any questions, any comments?
I have some definitely, but I don't want to dominate. If somebody in the room there wants to speak, just let me know when it's my
Well,
turn.
we're asking for committee questions or comments. So go ahead, Susan.
Okay. Well, I just want to preface this by saying that I appreciate how much work you put into this, Carol, and a lot of thinking. And so, please, any comments or, if they sound like criticisms, they're meant just in the spirit of really trying to find the best thing to do as, an HOA. This isn't meant to be disrespectful in any way. I just want to say that when Browning figures out what the HOA contribution is, or the reserve contribution is for the following year, it's not dependent on just the costs in the year that we're in currently. So you could reduce the amount of cost, say, let's just take landscaping, for example, by $500,000. And it might have the result of reducing the reserve contribution by maybe $20, maybe less, because it's not the year that we're gauging the allocations in that drive the contributions for that year. It's the whole 30-year reserve study that is the thing that's important. So the things that are really driving the size of the reserve contribution are the number of siding projects that we have to do over the course of the reserve budget, and the increasing cost of that over the years. Because remember, he includes about a 3% increase on costs every year. So that means that the cost of the siding and the painting is it's really high when you look at it out several years, out 12 years, out 24 years. And those are the really big ticket items. It's not going to be decreasing the landscaping by $100,000 each year. I mean, it might have a little bit of an impact, but it's not huge.
Thank you, Susan. Can I respectfully interject here that I have put these numbers in the Browning study, and I have included 5.35%, as he has in the past, for both inflation and in order to keep our $5 million threshold through the 30-year period that we want to see. So I can say in answer to each of your suggestions that has already been done, and I've looked at that.
Well, that does surprise me quite a bit, Carol. And how would he let you get away with putting just a stable $250,000 amount on the, I can't remember, was it the trees, just considering the labor costs increasing every year?
He typically adds about 2.5% for inflation. So that $250,000 might be $260,000 at some point, or $265,000. It'll be a minor change. But yes, he does do future costing.
Right. Yeah. And then to what extent does and I apologize. Thank you for that. It wasn't in your slide that there was going to be the increase. And so it just, I didn't know. But okay, so my other question is, with the contract that we currently have with Carson is a 3-year contract, and we already have monies allocated, or a budget allocation, or whatever you want to call it, for the next couple of years to take care of the expected costs in landscaping associated with siding. But did you plan to remove that? What was your thought there? you were expecting that it would be much less than projected, but are you really confident in your numbers? Because it's only September now, and there's still 3 more months of the year.
Good question, Susan. I am really confident of my numbers. And I have gotten reviews from, as I said, Paul Reeves on all of the citing numbers, citing related numbers. And he's very confident in those. So I've used his numbers. Additionally, if, for instance, in the operating budget, the Carson mow and blow and such else that they do that's based in our monthly operating budget, if that goes up, which it may well go up, then we may have as much as $20 or $30 increase per home per month in dues based on the operating budget. However, if in 2025, we have a total possibility for just the siding and the landscaping dues reduction at $131, we could certainly take out any of those operating increases from that and still have $75, $80, $100 possible in reduction in dues.
I thought that there was also a contract with Carson to do the siding related work too, that's also part of the 3-year contract.
And yes, again, so based on the slide for the siding remediation, the landscape part of the siding, including all of the known costs to date, which would include his current costs, and looking forward, knowing that we may put a 2 or 2.5% increase year to year from Bob Browning for inflation, which could increase things by $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a year. Yes, that's understood.
I'm sorry, I got a little lost. And so you're talking about the increase after the 3 years is up on the current contract that we have, that it's partly funded by operations and then partly funded by reserves. And then you're
Yes,
talking
exactly.
about beyond that, you would expect, you might expect more than a 2.5%.
Yes,
increase,
and luckily, the Finance Committee should and is tasked with doing a deep dive each year into the reserve study along with the operating budget. And if that's the case and the real work is done, then we will be able to adjust year by year ahead of time should we see that costs are going up more than expected or down more than expected or new projects come on.
Yeah, the last thing that concerns me, and thank you, Carol. I mean, it's all like hopeful in a way, although I feel as though it's possibly it's maybe a little overly conservative. What about your zeroing out that one line item for replacement of bushes and so forth?
Well,
I'm
as
sorry,
the board-
can you just remind me again what
it
that
was for tear out and replacement of landscaping due to the siding project in 28 and 29. And the reason for that is that Paul Reeves expects the siding project to end in August of 2027. And even as he says, if it goes out a month or 2 or 3 or 4 longer, it will still be ending in 2027. Therefore, the tear out and the replanting, the landscape remediation, as it's called, will not be necessary after the siding project ends in 2028 and 2029.
I'm not sure that item is necessarily connected with the siding project. I think it might be the only place they have in the reserves to fund remediation, landscape remediation and replacement of shrubs and so forth. And this is not my area. Probably Nina knows a lot more about this than I do, because she was actually on the grounds committee. But I mean, I know that we have an aging landscape, and we're replacing a lot of shrubs. So we may kind of get away with reducing the costs quite a bit, but I would feel a little bit nervous about zeroing things out, because there are always things happening when it comes to landscape plants.
That's
dying.
a good thought, Susan. Thank you. The line items that I've shown in these slides are specific line items. There are other line items in the reserve study having to do with landscape. There are normal plant replacements in landscape. There are normal contingency plans. There's bark. There are a number of other items. If you were to go yourself and look in depth at the reserve study, you would see those. And I'm not proposing any changes to those. I'm proposing that we leave those as they are.
Yeah. And I think that there are probably other people on the board that are better at analyzing the needs in that line item than we are. And that might be another reason for not zeroing it out. If you want the board to take it seriously, which of course they should.
That's a good point. And if you'll remember, in July, we had a meeting with the Finance Committee and the full board, and Bob Browning. And it was defined in there that line item that says irrigation valves was actually a line item that the board was using for siding remediation relative to landscaping. So the board told us in that meeting, and I remember that you were there for most of it, I think, and then you left a little bit early. But so the board explained that was what they were using for the siding remediation relative to landscaping.
Well, yes, I do. I recall that. And I also recall that it came on the reserve budget as a result of some kind of valve replacement plan they had, which they didn't actually implement. And then that $700,000 was left on the budget because there were other needs. So it wasn't, it didn't originate because of siding, but it's used because of that is the main reason why they're needing to do that remediation right now. But it's not a siding line item per se, I guess is what I want to say.
It's been renamed based on the board's request to Bob Browning. It's been renamed to siding remediation in the reserve study. And you have a copy of that new reserve study.
I'm sorry, I have a copy of the new reserve study
with the nomenclature changes from our meeting with Bob Browning in
We
July.
did. Yeah, we asked for that because it was vague. That was a good point, Carol. Well, other people no doubt have comments and things that they want to say. So I'd happy to keep my mouth.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Anyone else on the board? I think Tara has her hand up.
Yeah, so I'm going to apologize. I know, Carol, you've been here a lot longer than I have with regards to the community, but the 132,000, so I tend to be more fiscally conservative. That makes me nervous with regards to a trigger of a special assessment. So I wanted to ask are you aware of what the level is that would wind up triggering a special assessment? Is my first question. And then my next question is, if this moved forward and we had that reduction of $131.99 for 2025, and a couple months into the year, we find that it's really off, is there a way that that can be mitigated mid-year?
Of course, anything can be mitigated, especially if there's a finance committee that's doing a deep dive ongoing each year into the reserve study and watching variances month to month each year. So that if those variances start to become clear during the year, we can make changes, just like any business plan would have changes made to it. So good point. Thank you for your question.
And my first part of the question was, historically, what in the Nepenthe has triggered a special assessment? So if this continues and it is significantly off, what is the amount, say, per homeowner that would be triggered a special assessment? Is it 5,000? Is it 15,000? Just for my education, because I just honestly don't know.
The only threshold I'm aware of that the board has set up with the reserve study is a $5 million threshold, that we should not go below $5 million in the 30-year, in any year in the 30-year reserve study. Right now, the only point we go down to anywhere near $5 million is in year 2048, which is 24 years out. All prior years are above 10, 11, 12 million dollars balance each year until that year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If people spend according to your projections.
Yes, and if the finance committee continues to keep an eye on things as they should.
And can I ask Carol, what did Browning have to say about this plan?
Well, the numbers were sent to him. Unfortunately, the board, the numbers that were sent to Bob Browning for some reason came back completely incorrect. Things were in the wrong places, et cetera. I'm not sure why that happened. And then the board decided that they didn't want to send the numbers back and get a reserve study based on this scenario plan from Bob Browning. So that's the holdup.
I would suggest, and I don't want to say make a motion, but I would suggest that it is extremely important that we go back to Bob Browning and run these through, so that way we can see whether or not we go below that 5 million mark.
That's an excellent point, Tara. And that's what we've been talking about for weeks with the board. But several people on the board have neglected to allow us to do that.
So just for clarification, Carol, when you said that you put it through Bob Browning's algorithm, that wasn't something he did, but that was your sort of best guess at how his algorithm worked?
It's not my best guess. I spent 2.5 years working closely with Bob Browning back in the 2007-2008 period, doing all of the analysis regarding the special assessment at that time. So I have spreadsheets of his reserve study online, and I know exactly how his algorithms work so that I can put these things into those spreadsheets and analyze the end result to be sure that when I'm looking at each of these things in this proposal, that I'm showing all of you and our homeowners correct information.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say that it's persuasive, but I don't feel like I'd be able to make a recommendation to the board unless we had Browning say so. Because at this point, he is the guy, the paid expert. I mean, I think your numbers should be persuasive enough to ask him to run another, or to get his feedback and to run them through, and have his opinion, but it wouldn't be enough to say, yeah, let's go forward with this plan.
And
exactly
just,
what we thought and why we've been asking the board week after week to please pass this through Browning. And Nina, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to assure Tara and Susan that I also feel like we need to have the Browning forecast, or I should say scenario plan. I think it's really helpful, and I think it's a really good idea as well.
can I ask, maybe what the board hesitation is in doing this?
I'm sorry, Tara, I didn't understand your question.
When you said that the board has not supported going back to ask Browning to rerun these numbers, I don't know, I haven't attended the board meeting, so I apologize. It's just, I have a conflict, but is there, do we know why there's the hesitation to ask them to do that? Or why the
This
board
was-
will not move forward?
It's my understanding it was discussed several times in executive session, and Courtney Delphin brought it to the board and suggested this and gave the reasons why it would be important, which are the same reasons we're talking about today. So I don't know, you'd have to ask those board members.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that it has to do with some basic assumptions about what the costs will be, especially relative to landscaping moving forward, because those were big differences that Browning, I mean, between your projections and Browning's every year. But it'd probably be useful for that to be shared, you know, so that you had an idea of, you know, because you're just using your best guess of what you think based on, you know, actuals. But we can't know everything that's in the mind of the board unless Courtney reveals all to us.
John, did you have a question?
All excellent points. And Susan, I would just ask, would you be willing to make a motion to forward this information to the board for an action item?
I'm not sure if that is the wording, John.
I almost wonder if it's, because it's, hey, board, we've found what we think may be helpful as far as controlling and projecting costs, but we need, and we think that we've come close, but Browning is the expert, and it would be best to verify this before we make a formal proposal to the board on these. I don't know if that's, may not be communicated as well.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe kind of to summarize your basic assumptions, Carol, and just, you know, like assumption one, I'm just making this up, and please, you know, I apologize ahead of time for not doing justice to your work, but costs of landscape replacement haven't met expectations, you know, we can reduce costs in these years on this line item, just to see, you know, if you work at assumption by assumption, then we can get feedback from them that's maybe more specific to what they had in mind and why one, you know, one of the moves might be good or might be bad, instead of just the whole package, because it's a lot of information, and I wouldn't want them to reject the whole thing based on maybe disagreement with one aspect of it, if that makes sense.
That's a good point. And Tara, your point was good as well. I was invited into an executive session before the last board meeting to go over this with the board. Our treasurer recommended that I come in and go over this with the board, and several of the board members refused to allow that. So we're going over it here today. Now, Susan, if you or Tara, and Tara, I think you had an excellent idea for how to propose a motion. If either of you would like to propose a motion that we pass this proposal to the board for their review, that would be great.
Yeah, and I just want to say with respect to the executive committee meeting, it was probably a very good idea that you didn't just go forward and talk about your ideas, because there's a lot there and there's a lot to talk about as a committee with respect to those ideas. It can't be just you going in there, you know, even though you have a lot of experience in this area, it really has to always be the committee making the recommendation. And so I think it's just as well that it came down to this, although, you know, it never feels good to be told no.
Again, Tara or Susan, would you like to make a motion to send this to the board for their review?
So I had put in the chat, it's framing of the message. So can we make a motion to the board to have the Brownie do the projection to consider these proposals?
And I guess, well, if that's your motion, that's your motion.
No,
Oh,
I'm just asking, like,
okay.
can that be an appropriate motion? Sorry, that is not a formal Robert's rules.
My thought was that, that we could make a motion to have Carol summarize her plan. And, you know, kind of based on just the same way that she went through with us with her assumptions about certain costs and projections going out, and have the board review that and consider sending it forward to Browning and to give us feedback. I mean, it would be nice to see where the way they kind of think things should move forward or differ from your projections, for example, Carol. How does that sound? Does that sound like, I mean, it sounds like something you could probably do in a couple hours, but does that sound?
I think that's what I've been meaning to say, that we make a motion and have a second, that we pass this proposal to the board so that the board can review it and perhaps send it on to Bob Browning to give us a scenario plan view of the study.
Yeah. And
do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to give this particular scenario to the board and ask for Browning to put it into his report so that we can have a true picture from Browning about where we are, and I'd like the board to review it.
Can I add to
Do I have a
that?
second?
not as
Okay.
is.
Got it.
Do we need to?
Sounds
just
like
vote
it's
on that?
been a motion and a second. So
Okay.
why don't we vote on this?
Excuse me, is there any additional discussion? And I guess my question to the finance committee, I'm going to target this question specifically to the legacy members on this group. Carol, in her first slide, and also when she presented back in July, talked about whatever the current name of the day is for either siding replacement, irrigation, siding remediation, shrub removal, whatever. But there's been quite a bit of money that's been allocated in those particular accounts. There's been quite a bit of money that's been allocated in those particular accounts, and we haven't been spending it. So I guess my question for the finance committee, is it prudent to keep funding these accounts at the level we've been, that's in the reserve study, and we're not spending the money, and at the same time would have a positive impact on reducing the contribution to reserves? And I'm just talking specifically about the $700,000 that's in the reserve accounts here for the next couple of years. We're not spending it. So why are we funding it? And again, this goes to I'm a new guy on the block here, and I'm just asking a legacy question.
Well, I think that's a good question, but I think it's still up for grabs about whether we're spending it or not. I mean, I don't think we have the information.
Yes, we do. I mean, my understanding is, you know, and I'm kind of a simple guy here. We saw what the targeted starting balance was, what we spent to date, and what's going to be left over probably by the end of the year. It doesn't look like we're going to go into the negative. It looks like it'd be a pretty significant positive variance. Just asking a question. I mean, why are you funding something that you're not spending?
Well, I think that is, that's like a number one assumption that should go on anything that's submitted to the board. I'm not convinced that that's the case, John, but I mean, absolutely. It's not, I mean, you're not a simple guy at all in making that. I mean, unless you want to save money for, I mean, it's not like, yeah, unless you want to save money, then, no, you definitely.
Well, it's not a question of saving money. I think it's more of a question of stewarding our resources appropriately for our homeowners.
Yeah,
And again, I'm looking at the actual numbers that Carol presented here, both in July and here today. And I'm just seeing that there's a significant positive variance at the end of the year, and as well as going forward in the next 2 to 3 years here. So why do we, I haven't gotten an answer with respect
Right.
to, and these are actual invoices that are debited against this particular sub account.
I mean, the thing is that we've just gone through the summer and people don't do a lot of landscape remediation in the summer because of the heat. So the time when we would expect to see a lot of bills come in is like September, October, November.
Right.
So
But
when I'm saying, are these accurate projections? I want to know that. I'm not just going to base it on what we've spent the first 7 months.
Well, just for a point of clarification, I think this irrigation piece, siding remediation, was attributed to the shrub pullout associated with siding replacement and painting. So my understanding is those are the only costs that are being debited to that particular sub account, not if somebody over in Dunbar needs a shrub replaced. I think this is a specific area that's attributable to the painting and siding cycle.
Right, but they haven't maybe put in all the shrubs yet. They take them out, they do a lot of work around there, but with, with the weather, they can't replant. And
Fair
those
enough.
costs.
Fair enough. But I'm just looking at the actuals that have been posted to date, but what's been done in zone 4 and also what's probably going to be posted for zone 2. And it's far less than the totals of those are far less than $700,000, even if you doubled it.
Well, like I don't know what's ahead of us. Other people have more, but I think it's a really valid point to say, if we're not going to spend the money, consider reducing these costs, because everything helps. I mean, it's a good point.
And I don't know, one of the things with the components is the remaining useful life of them. I don't know on the shrubs that were pulled out, are they at the, whatever it was, 30, 40 years? I don't know how much of their remaining useful life was out there. So that's just something, when you look at the reserve study, and you're also, you're basically creating a savings account for when you have to replace that component.
Okay, so what we're saying, so what I'm hearing you say, Tara, is that we're going to carry forward a balance of about $700,000 going forward until the next siding replacement project in 6, 12, or 18 years, or $2.8 million.
No, that would not.
And we're going to continue to fund that account based on, right? I mean, so I guess I'm having some trouble. You have to help me understand the rationale behind that. I'm just missing the point.
So I'm not understanding then the way that Browning is projecting it. If he is saying that there aren't going to be replacements of components, or that we need to build, quote unquote, the savings account for that component, if that has not been considered, or again, the remaining useful life on those, then I can't speak to what Browning was projecting for that particular line item.
Well, I'm raising the question because I'm asking the legacy members of the committee that my understanding is you all were on the committee when the reserve study was done in 23, and these numbers were in there, and apparently I'm not getting a good understanding of the rationale from the legacy members of the group as why those numbers stayed consistent. Thank you.
And I had thought that on the irrigation, I thought there was going to be, and I'd have to go back and look at the notes, but I thought there was a significant changeover for technology upgrades for the irrigation controllers to have them go to Wi-Fi. So I think that there was a look at changing that over, because it was going to ultimately make it more efficient for watering, be able to see when controllers were out. I'd have to go back, and that may answer your question with regards to what occurred at that particular point in time.
Well, and there
Yes,
was also
Tara,
the-
there was a project called the IBP project. It was actually canceled in late 2022. And that was never mentioned through 5 different meetings with Browning in 2023 and 4 meetings earlier this year with Browning in 2024. And he said to me that no one let him know that that IBP project had been canceled back in the fall of 2022.
So I would have to defer to the committee, to the finance committee meeting minutes as to whether or not that was also communicated to the finance committee, which then could have worked with Browning to make those
It
adjustments.
was communicated in the July meeting that the finance committee had with the board and Bob Browning.
Thank you for that.
I'm pretty sure he knew about that. I mean, I don't know if that was what he was referring to, but well, I'd have to. I mean, I'm not going to argue that point now, but I certainly know that he wouldn't have gone forward with this. And I mean, we talk to him every year. It's not like we talk to him more on the years that he has site visits for sure.
Exactly. And that's why he said to the entire group that he was so surprised that in the 5 meetings he had with the board in 2023, no one mentioned that to him. Perhaps you didn't hear him say that in the meeting, but he definitely said it.
Yeah,
You know, we're talking a little bit in circles here, and ultimately, this is a scenario. It's not like it's the be all end all. There can be changes made if the board feels or we feel after we see the Browning report. It's just ink on paper right now, and I think we should run the scenario and see what it really looks like.
So I would say, yes, running a scenario and updating the study would be appropriate, but putting this forward as a proposal, I have a challenge with the language is all.
I have a challenge with the language too, and that's all. I have a challenge with even saying that we should run the scenario. I think we should submit the proposal to the board to review and give feedback and suggest, not ask, but just suggest they consider running the numbers, you know, based on what they think. I mean, based on the assumptions that they can agree with, because there are things that we don't know that they talk about.
Well, I understand that, but we should know. That's our job as finance committee members. We should know. I think that's our responsibility.
Well,
And right now, excuse me.
Sorry, John.
Right now we have a motion on the floor to pass this proposal presentation that's on today's presentation and forward to the board and send to Browning for review and feedback. That's a definite
Sorry, can you just
tangible
say
deliverable.
Can you say the motion again? Please?
Sure. There's a motion on the floor to pass this proposal presentation that we discussed today and forward to the board and send to Browning for review and feedback. That is an objective deliverable that I feel this homeowner association needs to move forward and to make sure we're using and we're stewarding our resources in a judicious manner. It's very simple, basic, and straightforward, and it puts some teeth in it. We need a deliverable here, Susan, to sit there and say, well, you know, it's nice to have. No, we need to have this stuff laid out because people's financial planning is at stake here.
Right, John. Thank you for stating your opinion so eloquently. And I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think I was just, I wasn't trying to be completely wishy-washy. I was just trying to be kind of respectful that the board would have an opinion, and we're in a position of supporting the board and making recommendations, not telling them what to do. So if I sounded to you like I was trying to, you know, take the teeth out of your plan, I wasn't really trying to do that. That makes sense.
Thank you for your comments. Can I call for a vote at this point?
Aye.
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 And I'm sorry to be such a pill, but could you just read the motion again? I mean, is the motion, you've heard
sure,
me, my
Sure.
comment.
There's a
Like,
motion to pass this proposal / presentation forward to the board to send to Browning for review and feedback.
to send to Browning for review and feedback. So I would like to have feedback from the board too, wouldn't you? Or do
Well,
you want to be picky about this? I mean, if you want to just go forward with this, fine, whatever.
I think, Susan, the whole idea is to get feedback from the board as well as sending it to Browning to get a scenario plan, reserve study view back from Browning.
well, and I
But
can.
that's not what we're asking, is it? It isn't.
No,
We're like making
I-
demands.
I think, well, let me answer your question in a roundabout way. We're forwarding this to the board and asking them to send to Browning. If they don't send it, then we have our feedback.
Well, no, I don't think that's true. I mean, if that's the way you're putting it, then I
No,
can't.
I'm not,
support that.
that's not the way I'm putting it, but the question is, it's their prerogative to send it to Browning. They don't have to.
But
right?
for us as a finance committee meeting, isn't it useful for us to know what assumptions we have got wrong? You know, what assumptions they have about the way they're spending and the way they're budgeting that we're not seeing and we're not understanding? I mean, I think we need that to be good supportive finance committee.
I'd like to continue on with the voting. Susan, would you like to vote?
I feel like I'm sorry, I can't support it the way it's written, and I support the effort, but I can't support the motion, if that makes sense.
Susan, would you like to vote?
Oh, I received your message loud and clear, Carol. Okay, no, I vote no.
Tara, would you like to vote?
I'm going to say no as well, for the same reasons that Susan pointed out, but no for the record.
Thank you. The motion passes 3-2. Thank you, everyone, for your comments and questions and the discussion.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. I appreciated being able to talk about this. It's a tough thing, and I know that, you know, you have a lot of strong feelings about it. Everybody does. It's an emotional issue, and it's good to be able to talk about it as a team. Carol, I have just one little thing to say that's not related to finance committee stuff at all. And with much apologies that I have to, I have an appointment to get a flu shot at 6 o'clock. So I have to leave at about 5:50.
That's fine. Thank you for letting us know. Okay, so the agenda is back up, and because of the late hour, we're not going to have time to go over the operating budget this particular meeting, so we'll have to look at how we do that. Our deliverables are to forward this information to the board, and we're down to homeowner comments. Do we have any homeowner comments? Go ahead. Here's the.
Will has his hand raised.
I'm sorry, Don Lanstittle has the floor.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear what he's saying.
I haven't said anything yet.
Oh, hi, Don. Okay.
I'm just
Didn't want to miss
waving to,
anything.
waving to everybody out there on
Okay.
Zoom,
Hi.
and which is kind of a become a usual thing for me. A couple things. Carol, I think it would be helpful for your annual proposed reduction in dues that you make it clear that that's not cumulative. That is annual reduction. The second thing is just on your diagrams and stuff, if you use brackets or a negative sign in front of things, it would, I think, help other people just to have a clear, precise understanding. Two other things that are kind of a little farther afield. One, that $740,000 that you were referring to, I thought that was reappropriated for other projects. And that would be something to look at.
According to the board, Don, if I may, it was reappropriated for the siding landscape remediation project.
But it was reappropriated. So the dollars were spent. They were not carried forward in some form.
Some of those dollars have been spent.
I'd like to see the, in your projections and stuff, I'd like also to see the reserve budget funding percentages going forward. And that's something that could be included with your requested Browning. And, oh, for what it's worth, I thought your $250,000 for trees was low. At the same time, 450,000 is probably high, and this comes from my years of experience on the grounds committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else in the room? Mary?
Hi, Mary Gray. Whoa, I'm loud. Dunbarton Circle. I would just like to thank the Finance Committee. It's apparent to me that a lot of work went into this whole effort, that as a homeowner, I really appreciate the effort to lower the dues. I haven't seen that ever. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else in the room have a comment? Hey.
I just want to be clear that Carol put this scenario together. And I think she did a magnificent job.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have a hand up on the Zoom call.
Yeah, I realize you've already passed your motion, but it seems to me what you're actually saying is that you have identified line items. Those are all projections. They're not expenditures yet. So that you've identified line items which, in your opinion, appear to be overstated or incorrect. And I would think that the best language is to suggest that Browning and that the board request that Browning review those line items and then rerun the scenario, because what really the issue is are the line items overstated? But I'll leave it at that.
I think that's what we've done, Will. Thank you.
I think
Ashley, I think I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting to see some good numbers that will bring a more disciplined approach, hopefully, to spending with the reserve study. But I don't really agree that it's going to be one-for-one cost saving in our dues. I think if we take the number, the savings divided by 590 divided by 12, because of the contribution and the length of time and all those different things, it might not be a big decrease. But I'd also be interested in seeing if we kept the dues the same, could we really improve our reserve health, for the future, and decrease the likelihood of an assessment or an increase further down the road. We went from being like 92% funded or 89, something like that. And you can see that we're going to drop down into the low 30s here going into the future. So I would just like to see a projection of making those decreases in those line items, but then keeping the dues the same as well, just to compare. So that's all.
Thank you. Any other comments from homeowners? Okay. Oh, Laurel.
I just wanted to echo Mary's remarks and say that I am tremendously impressed with all of the work that has gone into these reports. And I greatly appreciate any effort to bring spending into a little bit of a tighter line. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurel. Okay. No other comments? This meeting is adjourned.